you can direct them here, where we have all the previous talks up on YouTube. So let's get into it. If you have questions while we go, feel free to put those into the chat mechanism. And feel free to email me or tweet me if you have questions that you want to go into deeper or off a tangent after the session or after the talk. There are two features that I'm going to show that aren't technically released yet. They're only available in our early adopter version of SQL Developer. So please don't make any buying decisions based on what you're about to see today. The future features could change between now and when the product's released. Just a quick reminder on what SQL Developer is. It's our database IDE, our graphical user interface. So it's your development environment for SQL, PL SQL, stored Java procedures. It's also your graphical user interface for just interacting with the database, whether that be clicking into tables, writing queries, creating reports. It's a Java application, which means it'll work just fine and work pretty much the same on Windows, Macs, any of your Linux or Unix environments that support Java. We have more than 4 million active users worldwide. I'm going to be using version 4.1 for today's session, but most of what I'll be showing you is available in version 4.0. 4.1 is available on Oracle Technology Network as an early adopter or beta release. And we call it a free technology, but it's really included with your database license. So if you have a database under support with My Oracle support, you can open service requests specifically for SQL Developer. Otherwise, there's no license charge for SQL Developer itself. It's going to be free to use for everyone out there. SQL Developer also includes a fully functional data modeling solution called Oracle SQL Developer Data Modeler. And I'll just bring it up briefly today. You can't code yourself out of bad design. So if we're going to talk about performance, performant applications start with really well-defined data models. And that would be a talk in and of itself. But if you're getting ready to build a new application, don't just jump into Excel or jump into SQL Developer and start creating tables. Try to get the business users and all of the stakeholders to sit together and agree how you're going to actually define and store these entities in your database. And if you do that, then the odds of being able to fix performance problems as they pop up are going to be much higher. It's going to be a lot easier to fix them. So if you're on a version of SQL Developer that doesn't start with the number 4, there's a good chance some of the stuff I'll be showing to you today you won't be able to do. Please upgrade. It's free, and you are able to run multiple versions of the tool on your desktop. So if you don't feel comfortable getting rid of version 2.1 or 1.1 for some reason, you can stay on your desktop. You can pull down version 4.0 or version 4.1 if you're brave, and you can run those side by side. All right, so first features, it always starts with explain plans or execution plans. So let's spend a couple of minutes going over those basics. And let me make sure I'm in the version that I want to be in. Yep. So there are a couple of different ways that you can get a plan. We have our old standby, I would call it maybe a little bit boring plan, the explain plan. That would be the same explain plan that you do in SQL Plus or any of the other Oracle GUIs out there. SQL Developer's explain plan is accessible with this button on the toolbar. When I click it, it asks the database, what do you think the plan would be for this query? So it'll parse, it'll look to see if there's already a plan generated for it, and it'll show that below. What's shown in the plan is going to depend on what you have set in your preferences. And I'm going to be in the preferences a lot here in the first few minutes of this talk, so bear with me. On the database page, there's a section for Autotrace and Explain Plan. And Autotrace shows a plan as well as, of course, Explain Plan. So you can come in here and set up what bits of information you want to see. For example, if you like seeing the notes that you would normally see at the end of a plan in SQL+, you can see those here too. You just need to activate the section here that says Other XML Branch. So I'm guessing the core database team, when they add things that they want to show up in a plan, instead of adding columns to how the plans are stored, there's kind of a generic XML document they can just throw stuff to. You want to turn this on so you can capture that sort of thing. Other things of interest in here, for example, predicates branch. If you want to see what sort of where clauses you have and how those apply to that plan step, you would turn that on. Optimizer nodes, you don't want to turn all of these things on. It's just going to add way too much information for you to be able to digest. But if you want to see cost, but you also want to see CPU and I/O breakdown costs, you could turn those on. I'm going to pin this plan and run the plan again. And we can see these additional columns over here to the right. CPU cost and I/O cost. And the other XML information will be at the end here. So you can see this is an adaptive plan, yes. You can see what version of the database it is, what the parse schema is, what the plan hash is. So lots of cool information in there. And all sorts of hints that are in place. So don't hide that information from you if it's of interest. So you saw me have a plan open, make a change to how the plan is displayed, and then run another plan. So I have two plans here up at once. And if you don't pin your plan, as soon as I go to run another plan or generate another plan, this is going to close and it's going to just show me this one. But if I have if I have two or more plans open, I can select a plan and ask to do a compare with the other. There shouldn't be any differences here, except for those additional metrics. So this is just comparing the plan steps, not the metrics themselves. And if we do something a little bit more interesting, it's actually not interesting at all, but something with a predicate in it. First name. Let's see if there's anything that comes up with this guy. We'll close these. So I don't have to run the statement to get a plan for it. So there's first name like Rob. So that's a filter and access predicate. I'm going to pin the plan and change the query again to look for people named Jeff. Oh, did I do something stupid? Yep, overtyped the quote. So now if I compare these plans, I can see there are differences. These aren't differences of note, at least not for this use case. I can say ignore the predicates, so that plan step doesn't show up as being any different now. So everything I've just shown you has been in the tool for a very long time. An addition that we've made, I think starting with version 4.0, is you'll notice there's a little, oh, I don't have my zoom in tool turned on. Hold on one second. Get out. And where did my zoom in button? Here we go. So I like to draw on the screen sometimes. This button has a little drop-down button next to it. Clicking that will show me, if possible, the plan or the query at the cursor, if we can get the hash for that and get the SQL plan for it. And if I can, if I click on this, it pulls up the $V SQL plan, or the cached plan. And the $V SQL plan is the same plan you would see if you were to run DBMS X plan. So this is a more interesting plan. It's more likely to be the actual plan that's used, that the optimizer uses to run your query, whereas an explain is more of a take your best guess sort of plan. And if I were to pin this and run just a normal plan again, there won't always be, but there might be differences. And in this case, there are differences, I think. Yeah. Whether or not these differences are significant or not, that's up to you. But if you're wondering why your query runs great in one environment and horribly in the other, and the explains look the same, try looking at the actual plan instead. So 4.1 and higher, you can ask for some help. So basically, every time we look at a query statement or execute it, we also try to go get the SQL ID for that, and then we feed that SQL ID up here. And you can have multiple plans in the buffer or the cache. So that's what you have, multiple values here for. Basically have different child number values. Other things of interest. So we talked about explain, SQL plan, Autotrace. We haven't talked about Autotrace. Configuring content, we did that. We did pinning, and we did compare. So let's talk about Autotrace. Autotrace is kind of built-in, quick and dirty, run this query, trace what's happening, show me what's happened without all of the complexities and privileges required to do an actual session trace. So we can try running this query. Instead of running this button or this button, we're going to say Autotrace, and there's a preference for Autotrace. Fetch all rows. It basically says run the query and then fetch all the data. Run the query, get the stats, and also fetch or read in all of the rows back. They basically get read back to dev null on the client side, but actually read that data off disk into the database and send it back down to the client. If you don't have fetch all rows turned on, a lot of the IO stats are going to be way off because there might be 1 million rows there, but we only fetched 50 of them, and it's going to make things look weird. So you might want to turn that one on. It'll also mean these queries take longer to run. And I think we had our first question. Bob was wondering, does the compare also compare costs? And I think it does not. I think it just compares the plan steps. But we'll do another compare here in a second to see if cost comes up as a difference. Let's do Autotrace. So this is actually going to run this query, fetch all of the data back, show me the plan that was used, and also show me execution statistics. So basically $Z session stats that were zeroed out and then collected again before and after this query run. And here are those actual numbers. another preference. Again, I did apologize for showing this too many times, but there are a lot of $V session statistics. What we're offering to do here is not to show you any stats that are 0. So you only see statistics that have actual values to them. And if I say where, oh, I don't know. Not a very good one. But we're going to pin this one again and run the Autotrace again. Now we have 2 Autotraces, and we're going to compare Autotraces. So with this, we not only get to compare the plans, but we also get a compare of the stats. And they're not wildly off, because I basically just restricted one record from coming back, but they are off a little bit for each. Hopefully not everything's different. Maybe just 1 or 2 things are different, so you can kind of drill into where the problem is, so you can get right into fixing it. If you're in a 12102 database and you're running the database in-memory option, you'll see the in-memory session statistics down here too, so you can tell if those are in play or not. Everything I've just shown you, again, has been in the tool for quite a while. Version 4.0 added these 2 preferences, skip 0 valued stats and fetch all rows. In 4.1, which is an early adopter beta mode, so it kind of brings back that safe harbor slide, we also added this kind of a hotspot navigator. So there's a lot of information in this plan, and hitting the hotspot offers to take you to a place in the plan that's likely to be causing your performance issue. So this down here is highlighted. And it's telling me, hey, cardinality is set to 5, but we didn't actually observe any rows come back. So that could be an issue, although in this case, probably not. Again, this is a really fast running query anyway, so it's more theoretical. Let's do a more interesting one. I believe this one might have more fun stuff in it. Now this is a really big view, so this will take a little bit longer to come back. I'm also asking it to fetch all of the data down. This is a cancelable task, so if you get tired of waiting, you can get your way out of it. So again, here we go. It took 18 seconds to run. Step me to the bad spots. There's a really big number, and we're saying based on this portion of the plan, this step right here is the bottleneck. That represents where most of the time is being spent, is on this filter step. So if I want to go tune, this is where I need to start looking. Maybe. Again, there might be multiple hotspots as well. So here's another one. Clicking that hotspot kind of hyperlink URL text toggles you through all the ones we can find. And some of them might be cardinality based. So and here's a bad one. Cardinality equals 1. We actually observed 32,000 rows coming back. That's really off. So maybe we want to collect statistics. Maybe the statistics are stale. Maybe the database has no idea what to see there, and it would really change its mind and not take that step if it knew. Maybe instead of doing nested loops, it would go the other way. So this is new for 4.1, and we're really just using two different checks to identify the hotspots. the cardinality estimation wrong bit, if you don't have that fetch all rows enabled, it might look as if it's always going to just grab 50 rows because that's all we fetch on a single execution fetch. If you're always getting that triggered, you can get around that by just ignoring it because you know you're not fetching all the rows. But you might want to go into preferences and have it actually fetch all the rows. And again, if you're tuning a query that's running your application, you know your application is always getting all of the data. If you're in a tuning scenario, you want to match production as close as possible. You're going to want to go turn that on. And then the other one's all about execution time. So we take the total time being spent for that node, and node's kind of a funny name, but that tree node that's being displayed, and then subtract all of the time being spent for every child node in that. So for that plan, for that part of the plan, is that the biggest chunk of time being spent? So yeah, I already talked about this. You can come into your preferences and say, give me predicates, and then you can see those being shown. So here's a new query syntax that we've introduced in 12, the fetch first syntax, which is hopefully going to replace every time you've ever written a where row num is less than. And then when you get into more complex scenarios where you Google and it takes you to ask Tom, and he gives you these windowing functions you can use, or these analytics to kind of get, you know, the middle 5 hits. That's all much easier to write now. But if you look under the covers, you can still see that we're still using analytics to go get that data for you. And okay, talked about this. So again, clicking the drop down, instead of doing a explain, we'll pull out the actual plan for that SQL ID from $SQL plan, assuming you have privileges to $SQL plan. And if you pull that plan up, we do label the plan. Let's do that again. We don't have one there. If you're on the plan and you forget what the query is because you've come up here and done something silly like this, you do have this SQL that you can click into and get the query that's underneath it. Compare. Yeah, I don't think that compares. Let's try it one more time. Objects. I'm not going to do Autotrace this time, but just do explain. And the cost is $42,636, and I'm going to say fetch first, and there's only. And the cost is the same. No, we can just run a completely different query. Well, it's not going to be fun. Where object name is like, that might give us a different cost, or at least I would hope it would give a different cost. My guess is that it would give a different cost. Yeah, 284 versus that much bigger number. Yeah, so we're splitting the compares down to the actual plan step. Oh, is it down here? It might be. I might be able to cheat and step down to the. I don't think the cost is thrown into the XML other bits. If it was, you'd have to know how to look for it. I don't have a good answer for you, Bob. Well, I mean, I have an answer for you, but I don't think it's what you wanted to hear. The best thing you can do is just kind of see them side by side and see that the cost is different. So the SQL Tuning Advisor, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this feature because not everyone has access to it. But if you do have Enterprise Edition of the database and you do have the diagnostic and tuning pack enabled, you can ask for help. So you can say, I've got this problematic query, help me tune it. And that'll start a Tuning Advisor task. So there's also the automatic SQL Tuning Advisor tasks, and we don't have an interface to that. So if you want to see, tuning tasks that the database is kicked off automatically, you would go into Enterprise Manager to see and manage those, or query them manually in SQL Developer or SQL+. But if you're working on a query by hand and you're in the worksheet and you want help with it, and I have no idea what the Tuning Advisor is going to come back, but maybe that makes it a good demo. I'll click this button right here. Now, I've ran the Tuning Advisor on this database before. The first time you go to run this on a new connection or a new database that you haven't connected to before, it's going to come back and ask you, hey, you're about to do a Tuning Advisor job. Is that okay? And that's your chance to say, oh, I forgot, we're not licensed for that, don't use that. If you don't want to trust yourself, you can also go into Preferences and under database? Yeah, database licensing. You can just come in up front and tell us which additional database features you want to have enabled for your SQL Developer sessions and which ones you don't. The best way to protect your exposure is to basically disable, the ability to run this. So, don't grant the Tuning Advisor task privilege type things to your users if you're not licensed for it. That's what I would advise. And of course, train your people to know what they're clicking on before they just go and click on things. But after all that messy stuff, after clicking the button, you may get some advice back. Say, hey, we found a better plan. Consider accepting the recommended SQL profile. So if I click on the SQL profile tab and go over to detail, hey, I've got something for you. Go run this if you agree. And the benefit here is not great, which I wouldn't expect it to be because I'm not really giving it much to go on here. But it's saying, hey, maybe we can save you 10%. And 10% could be huge. I don't know. But I can come in here and see what's going on before and after. I believe these asterisk steps are where the adaptive plan stuff is happening, and that's a new 12c artifact. But it couldn't be just a profile. It could recommend, hey, the statistics are stale, and it'll give you the command you need to run to go collect statistics. It could say, hey, if you had this index, we'd be a lot better, and you could go build that index and test. There's no guarantee that index won't make other things have problems. So again, test, test, test. And sometimes it might actually be able to just rewrite the SQL statement for you. And of course, under the covers, the optimizer is doing this for you anyway if it can. But that again is one of the things it might come back with. So the interface to that's pretty simple. It's just a button push, and we'll go do all the work for you and show you the output for it. I'm not trying to sell the tuning pack for you. But if you do have it and you're not using it, you're kind of spending that money for not getting the bang for your buck. What I will sell a little bit is this particular feature in the tuning pack, and that's real-time SQL monitoring. and I believe that was first introduced in 11G. And I know a lot of people out there will see someone like Stephen Feuerstein give a talk and be like, oh, that's cool. How new was that PL SQL, widget thingamabob? And he'll be like, oh, Oracle introduced that in 8i. So if folks are out there not using stuff that's been in the database for 15 years, there's a good chance you're not using some of the stuff that's only been in there for 4 or 5 years. And real-time SQL monitoring is one of those. And this is a really whiz-bang feature. This allows you to basically observe the query run as it's running. The golden question is always, hey, how much time is left on my statement? And you don't know. But you can come into real-time SQL monitoring and see what plan step the optimizer is currently on, how much time is being spent, and what it's going to go to next. You can also use this feature to look at previously executed statements and see what the bulk of the query execution time was being spent on. Enterprise Manager has an interface to this feature as well, and it's a web presentation with plans that you can spin around in different directions and zoom in and out of, and it has this sort of same view as well. You can generate that HTML. So if you're a DBA and you're used to that Enterprise Manager view, you can see the same thing. So I'm going to try this once, but I'm not going to get frustrated if I can't do it fast enough. So I'm going to try to live demo this. It's tools, not monitor sessions, but monitor SQL. I'm going to do this on a different session. So here, I haven't used this feature before. I'm saying, hey, this is a tuning pack thing. Are you cool to go? Yes, I am. So here I've got real-time SQL monitoring. Here's the SQL Developer just trick. I want to be able to see the real-time SQL monitoring page at the same time as my query worksheet. So I'm going to say new document tab group. And there's an entry in here already from where we did that Tuning Advsior task, it looks like. So for giggles, I could drill into that, although I don't expect to see anything of interest. Although if I do, then I'll save myself some time in the demo. Live demos are fun. I think one of the things that Tom Kite talks about being things that he learned early on was to never do them. To his credit, I don't think I've ever seen him do a live demo. But I'm not saying I know better than Tom. I just know for the type of stuff that I like to show, demos usually more fun. So let's run a long-running query. I'm going to force Cartesian product, so don't do this at home. I've actually crashed our demo machine at Open World doing this. Yeah, I knew it wasn't going to come back with anything good. Let's go back. Okay. From all source A, all source B. So, and I'm going to run this on this connection. Yep. So run that. Let it sit for a second. Refresh this over here. Okay, so it just popped up. Show SQL details. My database is running on a virtual image on the same box that SQL Developer is running in WebEx. So this might take longer to get back than it actually takes for the query to run. We'll see. And it should look something like this. So I'll show you how to generate the HTML output too. And while we're waiting on that, so you've got tools, monitor SQL, which is real-time SQL monitoring, which requires the Enterprise Edition diagnostic pack. But then you also have monitor sessions. And I'm guessing most of you folks have seen this page before. So this is just a list of all the sessions that are in the system. And clicking on an entry up top, I get all the details below. So it's Still going? Yeah, okay. So I don't think there's too much new in here, although a lot of times I'll get questions from people, hey, why is my thing taking so long to run? And I'll just say, have you checked the weights? And they're like, how do I do that? So check the weights. Find the session ID, which would be here. You might need to know the serial as well, but probably not. We're going to tell you what the SQL ID is, and you can see what the query is, so you can see, make sure you're actually looking at the right entry. And then go click the weight. So this is going to show you the contention that's happening. That's not a fun one. SQLnet message from client basically means we're waiting for the client to come back to us and do something else. Again, this is another reason why live demos aren't usually fun. But you might have some weight events around here on I/O, resource contention. You know, basically, what are the things that are holding up the query? That's going to tell you why the thing's taking a while to run. Okay. Oh, that's funny. It pulled up. I had to pull up the old one. Again, live demo. What I want to show you instead is, if you like the idea of the screen, but you're not exactly seeing the information you like to see, enter the reports. So I've built my own version of the monitor sessions, and I think I've got it in this folder, sessions custom, yeah. So what I've done is I've had it also show me the current trace status, and I can start and stop a trace in here as well as kill. This is a report. It's not in the monitor session screen anymore. And when I click on something, I'm not just seeing, I think, the active query, but also the most recent query. Whereas the default view is only showing you the active queries. We have filtering in here, so that's a bad query. Did I fed it in the report? If I didn't, come on, give me something. Use your imagination. But I've added a column here for XPlan. So some people just really like the output of DBMS XPlan. So I've built that into this screen. And I also want to see $V SQL plan. I've got a performance inquiry and just a standalone SQL statement here. So if you might want to do 15 different things. You might want to see different columns up top. You might want to create new pages down at the bottom. To do that, what you first want to start with is find the original sessions report that screen's based off on. And I think that's Database Administration Sessions, and it's the Sessions entry. So this is the same carbon copy of Tools Monitor Sessions. But in the report interface, you can say right-click, copy, and then you can come down here to the user-defined report section and say paste. So I've done this a couple of times and named it different things. And then you can come in and say, okay, we're going to change anything that we want. So here's the base query. So you can see we're automatically filtering not to see background sessions. You might want to filter out, I don't know, parallel slave sessions. And then you have your child reports, which is where I did most of the work. So here's the XPlan report that I fed or created. And I'm just making a call here, and I'm feeding it the SQL ID, which is available here. So anything in the top grid, column-wise, I can feed as a bind to the child reports. And I did make this change. So when SQL ID is null, I replace it with previous SQL ID. Because a lot of times I'm going in to look at sessions that are already finished running, but I still want to know what that last query was. So use your imagination for what you can do there. Now, when you add the, when you create your own version of this, if you want to keep the context menus to do the things like the right-click, trace, and kill, you'll have to code those back. And I've got steps on how to do that on my blog. So just Google custom action SQL Developer session report, and that should take you to it. Oh, I'm taking way too much time. So I was at a conference in February and was watching a really smart guy who used to work for us named Carlos Sierra. He's built some cool tools called SQL T-Xplan is probably his most famous one. These are really involved scripts, but I was in the middle of seeing if I could actually code those into this report too, and I got really, really close. And I know you guys are smarter than me, so you can probably get even closer than I did. So let me know if anyone gets to that. All right, so there's more tuning features in here, and some of them are under this DBA panel. And we assume if you're in the DBA panel, you're either a DBA or you have DBA level privs. So you might be in a development instance and you're a developer, but you're a power developer. And you do things like, I don't know, manage stats and backups, and you do traces for folks. So if that describes you, there's some other pages in here you might be aware of. So a lot of folks don't realize we have a complete interface to the diagnostic pack. So again, if you're licensed for that, you're going to be able to look at active session history, the automatic database diagnostic monitoring, and their generated reports, and run through diff reports between different bits of time. And all of these features are around, hey, the database is tracking this information for you and is generating reports to tell you what it thinks is going on in your instance that might not be good performance-wise, and a lot of times we'll give you advice for how to fix that. The A in most of these acronyms starts for automatic, or stands for automatic. It's more of a proactive versus reactive approach. So to get to the DBA panel, which we added in the SQL Developer in version 3.1, is under the View menu. And the diagnostic pack support we added in version 4.0. So ASH active session history, show me what's run in the last 30 minutes or so, what's expensive query-wise. And so the page here, I can set a time period. I could say, filter, show me only application module SQL Developer. For the last 5 minutes, just show me our query users in this data warehouse and show me the bad things that they've done. And then I'll come back and say, hey, this SQL ID was consuming way more of this than that, and you might be able to tune that by doing this. So it's the exact same technology that you would see being used in Enterprise Manager, or what you might be currently running manually with SQL Plus scripts. We've just GUIfied it. We're throwing some wizards and screens around that stuff. Now, something that's not part of the diagnostic pack, and something that we've added brand new, 4.1, is this screen, and it's called DB Instance, although I've been calling it like the Instance Viewer. This is a, at the moment, what's happening in the database. What are active wait events, what's happening with memory, what's going on with I/O. Do we have any sessions that are locked? and then I can drill down and do stuff. So here I've drilled down from wait events into the wait events in the last X minutes report. Now I will say this specific report right here touches a view that comes with the diagnostic pack only. So we will prompt you before you jump into that report. All of the other drill downs, all the other pieces of information. This main screen is all free. It's not till you drill down into weights that you would touch the diagnostic pack data. So there's nothing to install other than SQL Developer itself. Nothing's being stored here, so none of this information is being tracked or kept in a repository anywhere. It's just going to be available as you open it in the tool. So let's see if it works. Help about, yeah, so 4.1. This is again the other reason I had the little gotcha up front saying this could change. So I'm in a 12C multi-tenant environment, and I'm coming into this DB instance page. It'll take a second to paint, although it should have painted by now. There we go. All right. So if I want a really nice big fancy desktop, I can go full screen here and get it all to fit on the page. I can also, this is not new for 4.1, but I can right click on these documents and float them. So I could drag this over to an external monitor, which is really hard to show on the WebEx. But just imagine I drag that to a secondary monitor and hit full screen and then zoom again. So that's about as big as I can make it on this display. So I can see how active things are. If I went and ran a stored procedure or benchmarking type thing out there, you would see these numbers spin up higher and higher and higher. And then as the workload increases, I could see, what the top weight events are. I've got physical versus logical I/O happening. Does temp space usage jump up while it's running? So this is all information that you could see by running all of those various reports that we ship with. But basically here what we're doing is we're running all of these reports for you all at once and painting it on the screen, hopefully in a way that's going to make it easier to read. If you want to see what we're running, another new feature, I'm going to just dock this back to the main view. View, log, statements. So this captures everything we send across the JDBC connection. So some of these metrics, some of these screens, parts of the screen we're painting every second, some we're painting every 5 seconds, some we're painting every 30 seconds. Obviously we're not looking at table space utilization every second. That doesn't make any sense. But things like communication between the database and the clients, maybe we're going much harder at. If I were to come into SQL Dev and write, select for update and run that across 3 different sessions, I would have block sessions pop up here in red. I would see that number spike, and then I could drill down into my sessions report, see who it was, and kill that user or their session, whichever works better for your workplace. And when I'm getting tired of playing here, I can close this. Anywho's, I think that takes me to the end of the show. Yeah. So I'm gonna, if you want to ask a question, I think you might, I muted the lines, I thought. Hit *6 and start talking. If you're shy, feel free to ask questions over the chat. Otherwise, if you saw something here that you want to share with your coworkers, again, this recording will be up maybe later this afternoon. I've got to pull the recording down and convert it for YouTube and put it up. But it should be definitely up by next week. I don't know what we're talking about next Wednesday yet. I got a bunch of different sessions in the pipeline, but already committed to paper. Product Manager Chris Jones will be here on the 15th talking about our new Node.js driver. So I'm going to stop the recording in case any of you are shy and you don't want to be recorded asking questions.